This is the Ag Queen Podcast. This podcast explores the agriculture industry with the movers and shakers of those shaping it. Here's your host, Lori Boyer.
Joining me here on the show today is Kim Rounds, and she is the manager of talent acquisition for Five Rivers Cattle Feed Yard based in Johnstown, Colorado. Being in that field and being a talent acquisition person, I mean, you're the perfect person to tell us the do's and the don'ts and maybe what might help people who want to get jobs in the ag industry. And I understand that the ag industry has a lot of jobs and there's a lot of openings for maybe some of the non-traditional stuff. But when I talk to some of the younger folks, they have a hard time getting into it. So what are your suggestions on trying to get a job in the ag industry in general?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advice that I give, because a big part of my job is traveling to colleges, and I talk to students all the time who say, well, I have no experience. And I like to remind them, like, you're graduating with a degree that's 4 years of experience. You just have to figure out how to get that down on paper. Because if I see that you got a 4-year animal science degree and the only work experience I see is a waitress at Waffle House, that's great, but I don't know how to make that connection to agriculture. So finding a way to really upsell all of those experiences that you have. If you volunteered, if you worked in a lab, if you helped on a research project, if you did a hands-on course, if you did any certifications, the classes you took, the professors you worked with, show me the agriculture connection, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a full-time job that you took on. All of those touch points are experience, and find ways to leverage them and sell them as your experience going into the industry. So I think everybody has more experience than they think, and they immediately want to discredit themselves if they aren't from an ag background. And don't lead with that apology. Just sell me the experience that you have, because you have something.
Mhm. Kim, when you're working for Five Rivers, are you primarily hiring for those who are working on a feedlot, or do you hire for office staff, or what kinds of workers do you look for?
A mix of everything, really. I'd say 80+% are going to be feedlot roles. So that's hourly, like a feed truck driver or a pen rider, or someone working in the mill, or our management or our feed yard trainee program, which would be designed for entry level and do a year-long rotation, and internships are similar. That's the bulk of what I do, would be those hands-on production agriculture jobs. And the other 10 to 20% would be jobs in our corporate office, jobs in the feed yard office. So more admin, clerical, IT, finance, accounting. It'd be a smaller percentage, but it's still there.
Kim, do all of those jobs need a resume?
For the most part, we go back and forth a lot on if the true hourly jobs really need them. Like, I really just need to know that you know how to do the job, you want to do the job, and that you're dependable. So we go back and forth on that, but pretty much any of those salary career type jobs that have a big breadth of experience you need to cover, I like to see a resume for all of those, because I can kind of see how all the parts and pieces fit from your previous experience.
Do the people that apply with you all apply online?
For the most part, that's another conversation we have all the time, is how accessible are our jobs. So for any of those management jobs, we leave them online, because if you can't navigate an online portal, that's probably an appropriate barrier to entry. We do a lot of things online and on computers. Gone are the days of doing everything on paper. We're a very tech involved company. You need to know how to use a computer. But again, if I'm more concerned on if you're a capable pen rider who can identify healthy cattle, if you're a capable feed truck driver who's going to show up on time and deliver feed correctly every day, if you're capable of working on a truck and making sure that it's running and operational and has all the PMs done, I'm less concerned on if you're able to apply online. So we actually have a text to apply feature for that. Just, you don't have to jump through 100 hoops to be a mechanic or a feed truck driver or a pen rider. And then some of those higher expectation management type jobs where they're going to be a lot more computer based and people management, those hoops are a little bit more appropriate.
I know we're using the feed yard as an example here today, which is really fine. I mean, we need to use something as an example. But in general, the biggest thing that I hear, and even from my own kids who are are in their 20s is that they fill out an application online, submit it, and never hear again. They don't know, did it get there? They don't know, do I keep pursuing it? What do I do from here? So, and I've heard that from others as well, that it just kind of goes into this black cloud somewhere. Why is that? Or what do you do differently to make sure that doesn't happen? Or do you correspond back with people that apply?
The online platforms are a curse and a blessing. It's amazing because we get so many people who apply. The downside is we can almost be inundated. Like if we share that on Indeed or LinkedIn, sometimes over the weekend you'll get 100 applicants. And me myself, I'm managing 5, 6 feed yards worth of applicants, and that's just one role. Like it's almost infeasible for me to do that. So a lot of companies default to using AI to help sort candidates, which can really
Um,
be bad if you aren't hitting all the keywords and getting all the right details in. The best piece of advice, though, because pretty much everyone uses an online platform, find some point of contact. LinkedIn, online, phone numbers, the website. And my boss said this, and I agree with him. Annoy them to the point that they give you an interview. Like let them know, hey, I didn't apply for to make sure that I keep my unemployment benefits. A lot of the applicants are that. They have to prove that they're applying, so we have to sort through a wave of people who are applying to keep unemployment benefits, a wave of people who are applying on a long shot who are not at all qualified, that we couldn't even begin to consider. And then we have kind of this chunk of people who are all very similar on paper, and I can't gauge your interest. Did you apply to 50 people and you're hoping to hear back? Is this one that you really want? And if you reach out to me, if you find some connection, a friend of a friend, a professor's friend, find somebody on social media and reach out to them and say, hey, I applied and I really want the job. And I know that that seems so backwards, but if someone went through that effort, I will absolutely at least give them a phone screen and an interview and give them feedback on why maybe they aren't a fit.
I think that is great advice, and your rationing for your doing that, I think is spot on for sure. If somebody is going to go to that much trouble, that they're going to be the kind of worker you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned keywords. How do you find the keywords to use?
In the job description and the requirements, typically there will be a few repeating keywords, especially in the experience segment. So, whether it's the type of degree that they're looking for, maybe previous work experience, if you can make sure that your wording, as long as it's correct and it's not a lie, make sure your wording aligns. If they're looking for someone who's used Salesforce or another like third party sales platform, make sure that you include that language in your resume if you have that experience. So, matching up the wording so that if they are using an AI sort feature, that your keywords align. As long as they aren't a lie, like make sure that the way that they're using those words and the expectations that they have and qualifications that they have are on your resume.
Do you do social media scouring, or what kinds of tips do you have when it comes to the social media side of applying for a job?
A lot of times I'll just kind of give them a quick look and make sure that they aren't totally crazy. I know that there's a bit of kind of legal haze around that area. A lot of times I just look for a mutual connection. I'll say, "Oh, they're from Northern Colorado. I am too." And sometimes you'll kind of look for that bridge of connection. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Like, "Oh, they worked for this person. And I heard that they had a big falling out with the last 5 people. Like, that might not be great." So keeping things private, but enough to know that you're a real person and that you're not completely bonkers. That's
Yeah,
typically what I use it for is mainly forging some type of mutual connection.
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of want to see, what their life choices might be like. I would imagine, because then it could translate over to those choices will be like at work.
Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely that. If the entire page is all falling down drunk at parties and concerts on every single day of the week, there are probably some questions that I'll ask in a phone screen or an interview
Sure.
to make sure that you're dedicated to showing up to work, but your free time is your
Yeah.
free time, and as long as you show up on time.
Yeah.
I
Like
can't have too much to say about it.
always tell my kids, do the New York Times test. If you wouldn't want it on the front page of the New York Times, don't put it on your socials.
That's probably very, very, very good advice.
All right, a couple more questions for you on this side of things. Do you have a background in HR? I should have asked you that a little bit earlier. No?
I don't at
No?
all. My
Hmm.
job for 6 years with the company was in operations, managing
Oh,
a
okay.
specialty beef program. And because I like recruiting and talking about the company, I was asked to take on this HR role. And so I'm learning as I go. I am not trained in it formally at all. So my experience really comes from applying and what I've learned watching people apply and interview and get jobs.
Yeah, well, you're definitely in a space where you've probably seen a lot more than lot of us have as far as the applicants that come through. What about language barriers? I know there's a lot of different cultures that are in dairies and feedlots and out on specialty crops and things like that. So how do you communicate and maybe tips for them on communicating with you when there is a bit of a language barrier?
Yeah, I have so much respect for anybody who can speak more than one language. I can like order food in 2 other languages, and that is the extent of it. I know enough to get by at the feed yard, and to understand a little bit, but if you can speak 2 languages and someone is looking down on you for the properness of your English, I don't know that I'd want to work for them. We're really fortunate that we have several team members who are kind of dedicated to being these liaisons. We do a lot of TN visas from Mexico. And so a lot of them, their goal is to enter the perm res visa process. So we screen those people a little bit differently. We're looking for people who are looking for a full-time move to the US. So we're really fortunate that we've got some amazing people who help handle a lot of those conversations for us.
Hmm.
But we also have a lot of people on staff who are bilingual, and we depend on them a lot. They're so helpful that they're 100% bilingual. But again, if someone knows enough to be able to take our safety tests, make sure that they can adhere to our rules, that they know how to communicate in the case of an emergency, those are our biggest concerns. And we do most important communication we have in both languages. But again, I have so much respect for anybody who can speak 2 languages that I'm never going to look down on anybody for not using the right conjugation of a verb.
Kim, good information here. I'm sure there'll be other questions in future interviews on this, but I might want to take this time now, if you still have a few minutes, just to kind of shift over to the trend side of things. And one of the things that you had mentioned that just really prompted me to go ahead and reach out to you. I mean, I thought about it for a while and then I saw that is just what we're looking for in the future as far as the agriculture industry. And I think I would venture to say this is true in all industries, but just the role of women moving up. And we see this, a good example, I think, is in FFA, where it used to be very male dominated. And now I don't know what the figure is, but it gets higher every year. There's more females in FFA than ever. You're seeing that as well in your role too, right?
Absolutely. The number of women who apply, the number of women who are like promoted to us by professors for being leaders in their colleges, who are really excited and pushy is the wrong word, but very aggressive in their passion for this industry. It's, I mean, I know that the stats put it not that far over 50%, but as far as the people who are applying for our jobs, I'd say it's well into
Hmm.
70%
Oh, all right.
female.
That that does surprise me a little bit. I didn't know it would be quite that high. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure for the management trainee entry management type positions, absolutely.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we've seen such an increase?
Um, I think that so many women were raised now by women who it wasn't a deciding factor on if you went to school and the clubs you joined and the activities that you enjoyed. I thought about this actually this morning. You know, my parents never ever ever questioned my capabilities because I was a girl, and I think that everybody my age and younger are in that same boat. There's just never been a question. There's no holding them back. And women, I don't know the stats on this, but we tend to mature faster. We have to make decisions quicker. especially in college, you don't really get to get away with not having your head on straight and a good head on your shoulders. So I think that they just rise to the challenge so much faster. And there are still exceptional young men out there, but the
Sure.
bulk of the exceptional leaders do tend to be women for the most part. I love seeing it, but my concern is, are we building an industry that women can stay in if they choose to have families and have children?
And what do you think? Are we?
Not yet. We're working on it. It's getting better. But even some of the conversations that I've had recently, it's, why would I pick a female over a male if a female has expressed, interest in having family and that will cost me money long term?
Mhm.
And my response is, you can't afford to not hire women. You just can't afford to not hire them. So whatever your solution is to make sure that they have appropriate leave and that they have the flexibility that they need to raise a family and that they have resources is far going to outweigh this cost of these programs up front and in lack of turnover, because I know that I'm so grateful to be in the position that I am, that I have flexibility. If my son is sick, I can stay home with him and I can work from home. And obviously agriculture is tough because I always say you can't feed cattle from home. But having that flexibility is something that I can't afford to replace. And I love the company that I work for. I love Five Rivers. I love our leadership team. And if you have that respect and that love and that appreciation from your employee base, you don't have turnover. You don't have to constantly be every 5 years finding a new person to replace this job and never watch it grow into something better. You keep someone for 10, 15 years, which is becoming rare in this job market. You've paid for all of those resources time and time again.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. And just remind me, it's not legal though when you're doing an interview to ask somebody, male or female, about their personal life, like kids and things, right?
Right. And that's my advice to women. Keep your keep your reproductive goals silent.
That's
If
where I
it's
was kind of
to
headed
have
next.
kids,
Yeah.
yep, just say, if someone asks you pointedly, you can say, I'd prefer not to answer, or I haven't thought about it, or you don't have to answer those questions. If they ask you if you have kids, are you going to have kids? Did you just get married? You don't have to answer any of those. Because sometimes those are a secret gauge of, well, how long is she really going to be in the role if she just got married and she's planning on having kids and she's from a big family? What if she wants to have 5 kids? We're looking at 20 years of her being at home more than she's at work. So just keep all of that to yourself. And if they ask, it is illegal. So you definitely don't have to answer.
You picked up exactly where I wanted to go with that conversation. Yeah. So a lot of I don't have the experience you have in hiring people, but I was a program director for a while, so I hired some folks in radio, and a lot of times that information was volunteered. Women do, I'm just generalizing here, do tend to be a little bit more oversharing on personal things than men, just in my limited experience anyway. So I think that's really good advice for sure. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, like I grew up with a working mom. And so to me, it was just my sister and I, it was both natural to be working versus the generation before that, where there was a lot of stay-at-home moms. And nowadays, with the economics the way they are, you almost need a two-person working household to be able to afford to own a home and be able to live. So
Yeah.
these women are working a lot more. So to your point, yeah, building that industry where you can have a woman that still wants to have a family is important.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it exactly right. In this economy, one median salary is not going to afford a house and groceries and a car payment and insurance anymore. It's nearly mandatory to have two salaries to uphold a household. Um, so women don't plan on leaving the workforce. I mean, it was like 80 or 90% of women who were working at the time have plans to return to work after having children.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I did. You and I are at two different points of children's ages, but yeah, I think we both did that. And a few years ago, because I do tend to mentor younger female farm broadcasters, I used to tell them, I'm not sure that you can have it all. I'm not sure that you can be a mom and have this taxing of a career because we work these crazy hours and a lot of travel when you're in rural, just all the things. And so I wasn't sure that you could have it all. But nowadays, as you mentioned, with some more of the flexibility and the technology and just kind of changing role of females coming into management, I'm wondering if that is changing where now, why not have it all?
Yeah. My friend Tyler Schuster has said before that having it all is a myth, and I have a version of this. You're just constantly juggling,
That's
and
probably
you
right.
have to decide what you can't drop, what you can drop, what you can put down and pick up later. And so if you want the career and the kid, it might mean that the personal life suffers. It might mean that, you don't get to the gym 5, 6 days a week. It might mean that you don't get a perfectly beautiful home cooked meal every single night and you have to meal prep on Sundays and eat that for the week. So there has to be give somewhere, but it doesn't have to be career or family. There are other things that can give, that can make both absolutely possible.
That's really good advice. Yeah. Yeah. What else? What else are some of the things that you've seen as far as trends or that people ask you about?
I will say that I think it's over 60% of students enrolled in College of Ag programs have no ag background. So I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. The type of people that management are looking for are not being turned out of college at the same rate that they were 20, 25 years ago. You're going to be looking at a lot of women. You're going to be looking at a lot of minorities. You're going to be looking at a lot of people who do not have a strong background in agriculture, who didn't come from a farm or a ranch. So, what you think you're looking for in this perfect candidate, and I put heavy air quotes around that because I think that the concept of a perfect candidate is a little bit ridiculous. um, what those managers are looking for and what those hiring and recruiting type folks are seeing are very different. And so getting management to understand what the demographic of people look like who are graduating can shift expectations. And I always say that first 5 to 10% is so quickly teachable. How to identify a steer versus a heifer, what types of breeds cattle are. All those small basic things that people with an ag background bring to the table are so quickly caught up and learned. It's the other 90, 85% that I'm way more concerned about, and the soft skills that you bring to the table. And I think that's where we have to shift is look for these soft skills that aren't necessarily teachable. And we can teach all of the terminology and the stuff of the industry. We can teach that so quickly if they're good people who want to work, who are excited to be here, who are great team members. You can't teach that stuff.
Right. I say that in radio too. You can teach them all the technology and how to run things, but you can't teach a personality. You can't teach the soft skills. You can't teach communication and etiquette, those types of things
Yeah.
that does come with a person. So I think a lot of that is the same. And to your point, more and more in my interviews now, people don't have that ag background per se, but they're interested in ag. So take, for example, the National FFA officer, I can't, Trey Myers from Oklahoma. He did not grow up with an ag background, but he was very interested in ag and joined FFA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see more and more people that FFA or 4-H of some kind is their touchstone of agriculture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's great that that exists to offer that bridge. People are interested. I say my like little phrase that I keep plugging out there is people are knocking. We're just at the wrong door.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Well, Kim, anything else to say here today? Anything else you thought of that you wanted to point out or?
I don't think so. I think we covered all my big pieces of advice that I like to give, and be annoying, show your experience, don't apologize for not being from an ag background, and show up ready to work.
Kim, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and joining me on the show here today and sharing your knowledge and expertise when it comes to applying for jobs, especially in the agriculture space. Once again, Kim Rounds, my guest. She is the manager of talent for Five Rivers Cattle Feed Yard.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Ag Queen Podcast with your host, Lori Boyer.